few weeks before it came to me. I had to choose my heart, heal and get free. She said life's easy, pain comes with living. Surround myself with everything God's given. It's time to change my routine, create a new scene that feels like an unreachable dream.
Good morning, everyone. I hope that your day has started off peaceful so far. Of course, you are watching Mentally How Are You? And I am your host, Neena Lock, here to discuss all things mental healing. It is the last Friday in August and the weather has shifted. I would advise for everyone to watch and share episode 11 on overall wellness to aid with the adjustments of the season. In that episode, we discuss seasonal depression and things like that, strategies and ways for you to move with the adjustment of time. So that will be a good one to review right now since we've gone from the high 90s into low 70s. But today, let's talk boundaries. We mentioned this again in episode 11, but we are going to go a little bit deeper this time. But first, what does that really mean? Boundaries. In order to set healthy boundaries, you have to understand what a boundary is. And I always teach that there is more to it than just cutting someone off or saying no. Before we can relax and live in our boundaries, we have to acknowledge our expectations, our standards, and rules, as well as how and why these elements regulate us and make us who we are. Bringing us to self-awareness, because that's what it's all about, being self-aware. So to start, I'll let you guys know that a boundary is set for you. It's to guide your behavior and your actions. A boundary is you stating what you will do. We often confuse this with telling others what to do, but that's not the clinical meaning of a boundary. To form a boundary in any area of your life, you must ask yourself, what am I committed to doing or not doing? Now, when we are speaking about what others should do, we are normally speaking about a rule. A rule is set for others, guiding and controlling their behavior. Notice the two words, control and their. This means that a rule can prove to be difficult because we can't control others, and we can't control the things around us that we simply can't control. So our rules will go through adjustments at times. They'll require you to focus on controlling yourself more than focusing on controlling others. So the question here would be, what am I trying to control and why? Now, speaking of a rule leads me to expectations. Expectations are what you would like from others or what you hope and expect others will do. It does not mean that you're trying to control someone, but maybe due to their position in your life or just life in general, you would hope they showed up for you in this way, that way, etc., right? This would be how you communicate. It can lead to disappointment, of course, or outside fulfillment. But the bottom line is, when you're speaking of expectations, you are going through a series of questions of what do I wish others would do or will do for me? Then we have our standards and morals. A standard is what you allow and how you form the world around you. A standard shapes your team and lifestyle. And the question here will be, what do I allow or not allow in my life? So when you put all of this together, you form you. You become who you are in this world. And the way that it works is, let's say my standard is, just to give an example, my standard is my lifestyle and how I want to live. I expect others to support my standards, but I also understand they do not have to because they have their own. My rules are that although others are different, they cannot show up with lack in their own life or in mine. If they show up lacking, then my boundary is that I will not engage. To be more specific with an example, I will say, let's say I live by a strict routine and schedule because this is important to me being mentally stable. So this is my standard, right? I expect my friends to remember my routine and not interrupt me during it because I have communicated the importance of this time. Now, my rule is do not call me during my morning routine. So let's say between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. That's my rule. Don't call me between those hours. My boundary is for me. Again, your boundary is for yourself. So my boundary is that I will not pick up the phone during those same times. That's how I'm limiting myself. So hopefully this helps you understand that you can talk about boundaries until you're blue in the face, but the only way to establish healthy boundaries is to have an awareness of self through developing your standards, your expectations, and your rules. And again, all of this forms who you are to fit in the world around you. And those things that you cannot control, it's okay, because as you have your rules, your standards, your expectations set up, and then you have a boundary for yourself, you're still able to flow and self-regulate in life because you have something to come back to the drawing board with. Talking about boundaries and self-awareness means that we need to discuss the clinical understanding of boundaries and self-awareness in pop psych versus pop clinical psychology, right? So let's bust up some myths here, because I hear a lot of different statements about being self-aware and about boundaries, and I want to point out what's clinical and what's just become popular. So one thing I hear a lot is that if someone gets upset, your boundary is wrong. You are not responsible for how someone else feels, and their reaction does not mean you are doing wrong. So do not take that in. That's not of your concern. Remember, your boundary is set for you, and it's how you're moving through this world. It's how you're maintaining. It's how you are self-regulating. So if someone becomes upset with your boundary, then that's something they have to process and get through. And not in a mean or cruel way. It's just allowing them to understand, hey, you know what, this boundary is for me because this is how I best self-regulate or move forward in my life. If it's not for you, if you don't like that I'm setting this boundary, then maybe we need to take some time and reevaluate our relationship. It doesn't mean we don't have a relationship, we can't be friends, we can't engage, but it just means that because there's a lack of understanding, we need to discuss some things. But just because somebody feels that you're mean or you're doing wrong because you set a boundary, that's not the truth, and it's not your responsibility because your boundary is for you. Another thing I hear is that setting boundaries is selfish. In fact, I hear a lot of people now saying, you know, it's okay to be selfish. Like, yes, I'm in my selfish era. Okay, you know, if that's how you feel, but setting a boundary is not selfish. As we just learned, boundaries help form healthy relationships, actually. So they protect your well-being and allow you to show up more authentically, more as you. And it's not about being selfish, it's just establishing who you are. And it's the way that you flow and communicate with others because you have these boundaries set up. Thirdly, I've heard if you say it once, then that's enough. Once you put it out there, people should just know what your boundaries are, and that's on them if they forget. This is absolutely false. Boundaries may require reinforcement, especially if you are growing and changing. Others may not be able to digest your growth, but your growth requires more than just self-awareness. It's also how you deal with outside forces. So if someone is unable to digest your growth, this is when you may need to adjust your rules and limit access to that individual. So this is that classic area where we hear about boundaries where, oh, I cut somebody off, or I let somebody be, or I had to stop the friendship or disconnect from this person. That would only be because an individual, you've laid it out for them several times. You've told them, hey, this is a boundary for me, and I would like for you to respect it. And they're not respecting that boundary, then that means they're not respecting you, because again, your boundaries are for you. So that would be where you need to limit access to that individual, because that would mean that they're a potential threat to you healing and developing. I believe the most important clinical fact to note regarding boundaries is that a boundary is not a punishment. It's providing yourself with confidence, with self-trust, and clarity for how you want to live. Now, moving forward with self-awareness, some myths that I heard about this is self-awareness is just overthinking about yourself. It's just you constantly reviewing and rationalizing or going over things about you. This isn't true. Real self-awareness includes insight, why you do what you do, and perspective, let's say how others experience you, right? That's the perspective. So your insight is about yourself, but then your perspective is about why others do what they do. So it's not just about you. You're developing a sense of yourself so that you can function in a world that you cannot control, and so that you can live and not just survive. So it's two sides of the coin. You have to view others, and you also have to view how they're viewing you, okay? Lastly, I got a couple more. Once you're self-aware, you've arrived. right? This is a classic right now online. Once you're self aware, then you've arrived. Arrived where? Like, where did you go? Self awareness is not a destination, it's an ongoing process. People evolve, so you'll never be done with self-awareness, and that's a good thing because that means that you're continuing to grow, right? Anything that is not growing is no longer here. It's no longer in existence. It is dead. So we are meant to evolve and continue to grow. So you'll never get to just one specific point of, oh, I finally understand all of me, because you may catch up and get to your adult self right now and understand things about you currently after reviewing your past. But then once you get to the current position, you're now building for the future. So there's not just one space for you to arrive at. This is an ongoing process. Another thing I've heard is that you can be self-aware without feedback from others. To be self-aware is just about yourself. The truth is that we can't see our own blind spots, right? Without good counsel, you're just guessing, and that defeats the whole purpose of self-exploration. So that is completely false. You do need to engage with others, and this is where, as a clinician, we come in and say, hey, why don't you engage in therapy and talk with someone who's away from family and friends, right? And this is a trusted source because this is exactly what we've gone to school for and what we do. And you can talk to this person and they'll help you move through the different layers of yourself and get to a specific point. And then continue to grow and develop. So the bottom line is that no, this isn't just about you reviewing yourself. You also need some help because, again, you cannot recognize or realize your own blind spots. None of us can. Moving forward, I am going to read one of our Mentally How Are You questions for the day. This one states, can you please provide more information about medication? I feel like I have started and stopped so many meds and no one truly understands what will help me. I have a bipolar diagnosis and take lithium for it, but it hasn't helped me and really nothing has. Is it possible to need medicine but be numb to it all? Okay, I know that you guys want me to talk more about medication and go into detail. Like, I've received emails about going into details about medication, just literally naming the types and dosaging and things like that. I will say, I know in our episode about medication, I was jokeful and stated, like, nobody's sponsoring us, so we're not talking about that. That was just a joke. The serious point of it is that it's difficult to talk about medications in general, just because whenever you put any med in your body, it's working with you as an individual. So yes, there are some general things you can say about medicines. However, I could never pinpoint anything specific to each viewer watching. Okay, so I hear you, and we may have to work out something and develop something so that we can talk about meds a little bit more, but I just don't want to be unresponsible with what I'm doing. Again, this show is to provide you with resources and to give you information that could be helpful, and I don't want to defeat that point, defeat that purpose. So when we're talking about medication, it has to be specific to a person. It can't just be in general as of right now until I create something where you guys can talk about it in general. It's just like when you watch commercials and they tell you all of the side effects for the medication. Think about the fact that introducing the med takes all of 2 seconds on the commercial, but the side effects takes up the rest of it because they have to cover a wide span of things. And guess what? You may not experience any of those side effects that they talk about in a commercial, or you may experience something, just totally different. So this I have to be responsible with. Now, to your specific point, I will say it is possible to get to a level where you can tolerate certain medications just across the board. And I think whenever we talk about, trying and stopping and starting, weaning off different medications, it can become kind of difficult because you kind of get lost in that whole period, in that strategy of it all. It sounds to me like if this has been going on for, let's say, 3 years or more, then I would say for you to, one, review that medication episode, because in there I talk about the 2 things I'm going to mention to you. One, I think that you should maybe undergo psychological testing, whether you've done it before or not. You should do it again just to reevaluate the diagnoses that you have. Sometimes we are being treated for a diagnosis that I'm not going to say has went away. However, the symptoms from it have decreased and we're experiencing other symptoms. So the meds we were taking for a specific amount of symptoms, last year, maybe those symptoms improved and now you're left with the residue of symptoms left behind. And that medication is not going to speak to the symptoms that are left behind. So you may need to undergo psychological testing again just to clarify and understand your actual diagnoses. And then another thing is gene site testing. I mentioned this in the medication episode. This is where they take a swab of basically your DNA and they align what medications could work best for your body, for your makeup, for who you are. As I said, we're individuals, so I could take, let's say I could take some Zoloft or I could take some lithium and maybe it does nothing for me. But for the next person, it will help them tremendously, right? This is because what's in our genes is we're different. We're all made up differently. So gene site testing may be helpful for what you're going through. I would highly recommend those two things and then moving forward with your team after that. But also remember, guys, your mental health, your health altogether, it's yours. So speak with your team about how you're feeling and what is going on. If you're taking medication, somebody is prescribing it. That means you need to talk with that individual and say, hey, I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. I feel like I'm not growing. I feel like I'm not healing. I'm just kind of stuck right now. And if they're not hearing you, then it may be time to reevaluate and see if new team members could help you out. Hopefully that helps you. Today, what I want to provide you guys with is a perfect resource that I think is kind of fun. It's called Mental Health Match. It is a free online therapist matching platform that uses a survey and a matching algorithm to connect users with licensed therapists and counselors who fit their specific needs, their budget, and cultural preferences. The platform also offers workshops led by therapists to help users develop self-awareness and coping skills. So, of course, because we're talking about self-awareness, this is why I'm mentioning Mental Health Match. This site, it acts just as a dating matching site. So just like you would get on Match.com or I don't even know the names of all of the sites, but any site, any dating site you would get on and the algorithm links you to someone who is like-minded or has similarities to you, this is what Mental Health Match does. It matches you to a therapist in that same way and makes it a little bit easier for you. Okay, so that would be a resource for you guys to dig into today. It will be attached to this episode, the link to start the process. Not even the homepage. The link will be specifically to start the process. So go on there, see if it's easy for you, and that may be what you needed to link up with a therapist or a counselor. For your wellness in 60 seconds, today I want everybody to focus on body scans and sensation tracking. The body often knows before the mind does, and a way to build emotional and self-awareness would be through this activity. So what I want you to do is pay attention to your physical responses to stress, anxiety, or even unknown emotions throughout a day. In a quiet place, you should sit or lay down. And remember, you are here to observe, not fix. So sit and lay down, scan your body from head to toe, and write out what sensations you notice. If you don't want to write it out, this is something that you can create a voice memo for, or writing your notes app on your phone. But the bottom line is that you have to have something written down so that you can review it later. So you'll scan your body from head to toe, and you'll go through noticing different signs like, oh, do I have a tight jaw? Am I experiencing shallow breathing? Is my stomach in knots? And is there tingling in my feet? Or anything else that could go on throughout your body. Focus on what stood out most during the scan. Did you judge anything that you felt? Were there emotions tied to physical sensations? Were there areas you wanted to skip or rush through? Because sometimes that happens. And finally, what is one new thing you learned about your body? This will help you not, one, self-regulate, but it will also help you become self-aware as a whole and not just mentally, right? You'll get to a space where, yeah, I know my mental thoughts. I know what I process and how I think through things. I know that I'm thinking from a space of trauma, but now you'll understand if your body is operating from trauma as well as you go through scans. As I mentioned, if you get to scanning and you get to one part where it's like, I want to hurry up and rush and get through that, and I really don't want to point out if there's a feeling there, that could be a result of trauma. And if your mental thinking, like if your thinking is from a traumatic place and your body is also there, then that means you need a complete holistic healing. Okay, so write it down. Figure out one new thing you learned about your body, and hopefully this helps you to calm yourself as well. Remember to breathe as you do so. I think that is all that I have for you all today. I thank you for sitting with me on this episode of Mentally How Are You? Of course, it is my hope that you are leaving more stable than when you came in, and I'll see you guys next Friday for more. Bye.
No judgment, just love, so I can be me. I'm tired of hearing it's okay not to be okay. Just want the dark days to go away. Mentally, how are you? How are you? Yeah, I know it's hard, but you can get well if you want to. Mentally, how